The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around the subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Last week I had the opportunity to sit down with 4 former guests. It was one of those shows that was designed to just kind of catch up and see where each of them were and how life had been since they'd been on the show. And I had put out a message on Instagram one day and I said, what kind of shows would you like to see? What guests would you like to see? And one of my guests and friends now his name is Bryan. He's in Virginia. He's retired from the fire service, retired from the department I retired from. He had 34 years of total fire service. So this guy has been through it. And he says, hey, why don't you bring back some former guests? And I thought it was a wonderful idea, but if we're going to do it, you're going to be there. And so he got suckered into it by just making the suggestion. And then 3 other guys raised their hand and said, yeah, I want to do it. And the interesting thing about it was that they wanted to talk about accountability, basically. And this is something I've been asked before, how do you know people are telling the truth? How do you know people lay their story on the line like they say they do? Truth of the matter is I don't know it. People could be making it up for all I know. I trust people that what they're saying is true and accurate. I've had maybe 2 or 3 shows where I've come away going, I got questions about that one, or that one doesn't sit right. But then I have other people listen to them and it kind of works out. I kind of get it assured that it sounds okay. Things kind of check out, for lack of a better word. And we got on a couple of different subjects during this show. One was this ability to kind of open up and finally say, hey, no, I didn't give it all when I was on this show. One of those things was kind of talking about downfalls. A couple of the guys didn't want to admit how bad it was for them, how much they were drinking or how dark it was. And I can't blame people. People come on the show and they share some pretty dark secrets or dark experiences and traumas. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming from a listener's standpoint, and it has to be overwhelming from that personal standpoint. Listen, I'm not immune to shit in my life. Shit I've been dealt and shit I've dealt, to be honest with you. And to sit down and get in front of a microphone and be 100% brutally honest, Jesus, that's intimidating. I'm not sure I could do it. There's a lot that I do share. There's a lot I keep to myself to just say, okay, this is something I work through on my own. And some of that is just, there's this, I don't know. We bring it up in the show. There's a vulnerability that you have to be willing to get to. And from that vulnerability is a jumping off point for growth and for healing. But man, you got to be willing to get there first. And that is a subject that we talk about, is how do you become vulnerable? How do you become trustworthy, trusting enough to open up and share some of the really dark stuff. And I mean, the fact that you're having trouble quitting drinking and you are flat out an alcoholic, or you're suicidal, or you had these suicidal thoughts, or, infidelity, or, gambling, or whatever it is, whatever the addiction, whatever the vice is, the downfall is. These are hard things to talk about, hard things to share, hard things to look in the mirror and go, yeah, that's me. Warts and all, scars and all, that's me. And it's hard to love yourself despite them. It's even harder to trust that other people are going to love you despite them. I went back to therapy this week as well. And it was eye-opening because I didn't realize how much I still need that. I need to still fix myself. And there I go, talking about fixing. There's no fixing myself. It's a matter of just learning how to deal better with everything that goes on in my life. I didn't realize how much retirement was going to hit me. And I know somebody's out there laughing. Retirement, okay. I know my career was shorter than most people who call themselves retired. And technically, the state calls me retired. I separated and changed directions a little bit. But I left that behind. And I left a quote unquote family behind. And I said it last week. I said, when that door shuts, it shuts. And for some reason, I don't know if I thought I was immune to it or I was going to be above it or what. But you know what? It's fucking ridiculous. No one is immune to it. No one's above it. That door does shut. And it's almost necessary, I suppose. Because those guys need to go on with what they're doing. They need to go on concentrating on their job. They need to, their life gets consumed by it. Mine did. My life was consumed by it. And I wasn't even to the point where I know friends and coworkers are consumed to the level, at least, that they're consumed. But because of the schedule and because of the type of work and because of the humor and because of the traumas, we tend to isolate ourselves from I guess reality or civilians or outsiders. We gather as firefighters. We spend 24 hours together in a firehouse. We text and call each other outside of work. And some of that is just because that's what's available to us. Our crew is off at the same time we're off, and they're present for 24 hours at a time when we're there for 24 hours at a time. So we tend to fall under those guys and gals as our support and our families and our circle. Well, I'm here to tell you that does bite you in the ass, because you step away and the door shuts, and now you're left without anything. And Bryan says it in this episode that I'm releasing today. He says, retirement brings a whole nother set of issues, and you need to be prepared to be very lonely for the first couple of years. And I thought to myself when I heard that, I thought, fuck, couple of years? The first week, 10 days has been rough enough. But he's saying couple of years. He's been out for 2 years, 2+ years, and he still feels it. And I wonder if that feeling ever goes away. I would assume at some point it subsides and you start to find your way. I think it's tough, especially when you're an introvert, and that's what I am. I'm an introvert through and through, despite the fact that I sit here behind a mic and I put out a show every week, and I'm on the phone constantly with guests or with with guests or prospective guests, whatever you want. And but I'm an introvert, and it taxes me to go out. It taxes me to quote unquote people, and I would prefer to stick around the home base, read a book, watch a show, every once in a while make a phone call, reach out to people, but I don't do enough of it. And so for me to create a new support system is going to take some work, and it's going to be exhausting. And it is a daunting thing in my mind. So while my circle or my support is wide and varied, it's just not numerous. And I need to be mindful of that. I need to be open and willing to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need a friendly voice in my ear. I need to say what's on my mind. I need to express myself and feel like I'm safe doing it. I've had a couple of guys reach out to me asking me, well, what's it like? What's it like getting ready to step away and close a chapter? And I tell you what, when you're leading up to it, it's exciting. Like, yeah, I'm going to get out. I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to have, weekends again, or I'm going to have a normal, quote unquote, normal routine. But then when you get out and you have that normal routine, you're kind of like, man, I wish I was going to work again. And I wish I had I wish I had that adrenaline of running up and down the road and making that noise and just kind of living that life, because it is fun when you're doing it, and it's a very, very sharp line when you step away. So I guess the moral of the story is, when you're getting into that position and you think you're coming out of the fire service, or you think you're coming out of the military, or you're coming out of law enforcement, make sure you're set up for some success. Have a system in place, have people in place, have I don't know, have safety nets in place so you can express, and you can let people know what you're feeling, how you're feeling, what you need. It's not something I've ever been good at, and I know there are people out there who can attest to it. And it's something I am still learning. I'll be 55 in about a week and a half, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to say I need. And I'm learning how to say it before I'm at a crisis level. And that's not easy. That is not easy at all. But this conversation that I had this week kind of helps. I talked to Bryan. I talked to a couple other people I know have stepped away from the fire service, or getting ready to step away from the fire service. And it's really good to know that these feelings are natural and normal, and kind of what to expect. The rest of the guys, I had a few other guys on there, and they really wanted to talk about how hard it was to be completely open and honest, not only with themselves, but with everybody. And I guess the other theme of this show is failure. The fact that you are going to fail, you are going to fall down, and that's okay. Because when you fall down, it gives you that chance to get up, to move forward, and to grow. And again, I keep going back to it in these intros. Growth is what we're after. And so I see failure as a road to success. So that's the only way you can succeed, is through some failure. If you haven't failed, you haven't tried. And if you haven't tried, you haven't had true growth. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to live in some discomfort before it gets better. I guess it's a matter of what you're willing to live through, what level of discomfort are you willing to experience? And then I think the growth is unlimited once you do that. Once you find that level, and you kind of sit with it and move forward and push through it, I think the growth can be exponential. This is episode 110 of The Things We All Carry. This week I have what I call a roundtable, and I have 4 former guests. I have Tyler from Wisconsin, who was on episode 37, I believe, if I have that correct, and hopefully I got that right. And then I have Ian from Virginia, who is from episode 39. Bryan, also from Virginia, and he was and he holds the record. He was episode 55, 56, 57, and 58. Those are fascinating episodes, and he has a 34-year fire service career, retired as a captain, and he was through some shit when he was in the fire service. So, and then finally we have Mike, also out of Virginia, and he was episode 75. All these guys were willing to step forward once again, to get in front of this mic, to face questions, and to kind of bare their soul, and maybe bare their soul more than they did on their original episodes. We talk about drinking. We talk about suicide. We talk about traumas. We talk about how to move forward. We talk about how to grow, and where they were when they came on the show, why they came on the show, and where they are now, and where they're headed from this point forward. This was a conversation that just flowed. There were some technical difficulties at the end, so I apologize for that, but I tried to clean it up as best I could. And I can't thank these guys enough. It was one of those conversations. It was a pleasure to have, and I hope that I can do a couple more of these in the future as this show progresses and matures a little more. So you guys sit back and enjoy episode 110 of The Things We All Carry, and get outside, enjoy spring, and do something for yourselves. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes, but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry, or email my story at thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. Guys ready? Guys comfortable? All right. Well, we'll do this and just have that conversation, see where this goes. This could be awesome, or it could be a complete shit show. I don't know. I'm here for it either way, so whatever. Welcome back.
Kind of like our lives.
What's that? Kind of like our lives. Well, so welcome back to The Things We All Carry. This morning I have kind of a different show. It's busy. I've got 4 faces staring at me on my computer screen and one staring at me from the couch across the way. And good morning to each of you. Thanks for joining me. I have Tyler, and he's out of Wisconsin. He's what episode 37? Tyler, is what I looked up. So you're episode 37. You're going on 20 years of service, and you are a fire captain in Wisconsin. Did I miss anything there for you?
I guess most importantly, a husband and a father.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't mean to cheapen that. I apologize.
Yeah. I think that's where one of my biggest things is that we sometimes forget obviously this is a show about firefighters and paramedics and emergency services and stuff. But I think sometimes we forget the most important part, which is kind of who we are as a person. But yeah, 20 years in the fire service, went through some significant loss during my time, and came on your show and shared that story. And sort of why I'm back is, I guess, I was very open and honest and, told my story and how I moved sort of forward after that. But part of the story that I didn't share is that my family and myself have always struggled with alcohol and addiction, and kind of the theme that I've shared, especially as of recent, is that kind of the hero can't be weak, and you can't really have a kryptonite. And unfortunately, I did have a kryptonite, and it was alcohol. And I've quit drinking. Very open and honest about the negative effects that it had on my life, and I think it's a great opportunity to be honest and share with listeners and the world kind of that it is okay to have a weakness, and to hopefully address that and, kind of kick it in the teeth and look it in the eyes and say that there's something better for me out there. And by people coming out and talking about it, hopefully it'll help others. And I guess it's this kind of my redemption episode to say, here we are. Let's crack open the safe and get it out there.
So with that introduction, Ian, you've got big shoes to fill. You're next, because you were episode 39. You joined the Army right after 9/11, basically, correct?
Correct.
And then you were a forward observer in Iraq, and I think what I wrote in your intro is you got to spot things and listen to things go boom quite often.
Yeah.
And go ahead, man.
Well, I was just saying, yeah, I was lucky. I came into the fire service at 19 years old. Signed to one of the busiest counties, or busiest stations in the county. And so we were running quite a bit, and then 9/11 happened, and that kind of flipped my world upside down. And had a buddy of mine that was itching to go and brought me along with him. So yeah, I went down range for a little bit, and then I came back to the fire service. Saw quite a bit in Iraq. Was exposed. It was a whole different level of what we normally do, as far as people call us after a bad event, and I'm seeing things firsthand, and not only seeing it, but then because of my fire background, they kind of made me an honorary medic, because they didn't give us one. So it was a different ball game, and a lot of images, a lot of smells, which I attribute some of my fire service where kind of swallow those things, because I came in under a whole different regime back then. So yeah, this stuff just compounded as my career went on, and we got out here and watched it all crumble down.
And you're 20 years in now, total service in the fire service, correct?
Correct.
And next up is Bryan, and I gotta recite his episodes because it's 55, 56, 57, and 58. So
Yeah,
he and
I'll
I had
look you up.
he and I had multiple conversations sitting in my apartment, and we got into hours of conversation. And Bryan, you had 34 years in the fire service. You retired as a captain, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago in a few months.
So welcome, and thanks for coming back on.
Thanks.
And thanks for being here. I haven't had someone live with me in a while, so it's beautiful. I love it.
It was a nice drive to get out here. So, still getting used to this retirement thing. There's been a lot happening especially the last year, the loss of my mom and, medical problems, just, with my parents, and my father-in-law also passed away. And, this last year's sucked really for a family, but, not the way I guess you really picture retirement is going. Retirement sitting on the beach and drinking back, some sort of spirit or something like that. But on the good side of it, I'm quit drinking. It'll be 2 years in July of this year for me not having any alcohol, and that has been huge for me, especially going through this last year. There's been many, many times where I just want to stop and say, screw it, I'm going to the pub, and I didn't do it. But I'd say, retirement's good. Love it. The only thing I miss in the fire service is the people, and that's it now.
And then finally, Mike, over there in where are you right now? Henrico?
I'm down at, Chester, Virginia.
Chester. I forgot where you live.
Yes,
You're working in Henrico, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And you were episode 75. So you're the latest episode that I have coming on today. And you're looking at about almost 17 years as a firefighter, correct? And you started really early as a junior in the volunteer program, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And then 18 plus as a paramedic?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And Tyler kind of gave a brief little history of his story, and he mentioned it. He had a bit of loss in his career, and I read his story. I believe, was it Fire Engineering or Firehouse Magazine? Which one was it, Tyler, you wrote for?
Firehouse Magazine.
Okay. And I read your article, and I knew I had to reach out to you because you experienced something that for a lot of people is one of our greatest fears, and that's running a call that involves either a family member or someone that's near and dear to you.
Yeah, it was, and it was during a tough period of my life. Just sort of, the recap on it was, I had just finished, paramedic school, which was a lifelong dream. And during that process, my wife and I, we had two children and a stepson. We separated. I was kind of moving in my own direction of life, achieving dreams that I never thought were possible. She was pursuing a management position, where she worked, and we were both kind of stuck in our ways that, both of our life choices of career were more important than what the other person was doing. And, I had, moved out and was, living in, the house that I grew up in. My parents had kept it after they sold it. And, we were paged out to a motor vehicle crash, with the occupant partially ejected. And as we were responding, they were giving updates, kind of knew it was going to be probably a fatal, got on scene and realized that, it was my family vehicle. My chief told me that it was my wife. And then, obviously you can go back and listen to the episode of how those events went that day and stuff. But from that point forward, I was always a partier and, kind of the life of the party, had a lot of fun, carefree, funny. But it turned from that point, I think I was constantly running from something and trying to numb some emotions and kind of get away from, what had happened that day. And 10 years later, I think I just figured out, honestly, almost kind of, we'll call it recently, if you give, the ratio of 10 years to the months now that I've kind of figured life out, I feel that eventually you can't keep running from it. You have to face it. And, alcohol's just I'd hate to call it a tool, but that's what I used it as a tool to, I think, get away from the reality of emotions that had developed from that day. And, little did I know that, I guess, a second chapter of this story would be actually coping with that loss and kind of, running into the fire, if you will, and facing the demons kind of head on that developed from that event.
Yeah, and that event is one obviously nobody wants to run. You roll up on scene, you see your own car, and you're, even if in your case it's a strange wife, but it's still your wife, and it's still someone you loved for a certain period of time, and that's just unfathomable in my mind. And everyone sitting around this conversation has seen some shit that you don't really want to run, but that just takes it to another level in some cases, and it's understandable that you react that way.
Yeah. And it was like, it sucks enough that it was obviously a girl that I married. She was, basically my high school sweetheart. But to add to the complexity of it, it was, when she passed away, there was so much, we hadn't closed any chapters. We were still, working things out and then not, and there was regret. And, I always tell people that, that I see separating and, unless you're ready to, if this person passes away, unless you can walk away from that and say, I gave it all I had, then don't give it up yet, because God forbid something happen and you have to face a funeral. The only thing worse than going to a funeral is going to one with your heart on your sleeve and having to bear grief with regret.
And we'll get to more of that and more of how you recovered and more of, you reached out and you're like, man, I didn't tell the truth on some things. And that it kind of jumped out at me when you said that, but we're going to come back to that. I want to touch base with Bryan and Mike, because you guys have a very similar story, because you guys were young getting into the fire service, and you both, well, actually, and Ian, the three of you have all been to the Center of Excellence.
Yeah. I was there in November 2018 is when I went in, the night before Thanksgiving. And my first morning, I woke up there on Thanksgiving morning and was there up until December 23rd, I believe, is when I came home. And I came home from there too early. I told them I was not staying there over Christmas. It was my granddaughter's first Christmas. I missed Thanksgiving with my family, but I wasn't missing Christmas with my granddaughter. And when I got home that next morning, I realized I need to be back. And I was very tempted to jump into my truck and just drive right back up there on my own. I will say I was reluctant when I got up there. I didn't put forth everything I should have into the program, because you can get a lot out of it, but it takes you putting in that work also.
Right.
And I held back a lot. Fear, trust, that's a huge thing, was trust with me. I've been, just never really trust therapists or even just talking about anything that was going on in my life. So I did not get everything out of that center that I should have gotten out of it. And I changed that, when I went back, because I just got done. Last year, I went back with my therapist for about 5 months talking about stuff. And really opened up then. And that's when I let everything down with him and talked about everything going on. And it really helped out a lot. And I wish I had done that at the center, because I think the center would have done a whole lot more for me. I don't regret going there. I think it was a great experience. I just wish that I'd put more into it.
Mike, what was your experience up there?
It's kind of the same as he's saying. I'm happy I went. I don't regret going there. Now I haven't returned, but I've honestly thought about going back because it's the same thing. You know, I mean, I can almost resonate, you know, with the trust issue, and again, the revelations that I've had since I came back from the center, since I've been working with a therapist, working through, you know, these fucked up things that we have to see and do as a firefighter. And then, you know, other things are starting to come to light now. Again, like we talked about in the intro, it's been a fucking roller coaster, you know, and the big thing is, you know, you know, there's no fix, you know, I'm never going to be fixed. I don't think any of us are going to be fixed. It's just, the goal is we just keep fucking pressing forward, you know, and accept our fucking failures that hit us damn near every damn day, type deal. But it's, yeah.
What about you, Ian?
So,
What was your experience up there?
I mean, just like the other guys, it was a great experience. When I went there, I mean, I was broken. I was the lowest of lows. You couldn't get a smile on my face. I mean, my funeral was my possible funeral was literally 8 days before I walked in that door. And it was a fire officer that gave me the number to the place, because I had seen the head shed. You know, I went upstairs at headquarters after I told them my attempt, and the department did. I mean, they did their job. I kind of, what do all firemen do? We all go to work. We don't worry about ourselves. We just press forward and go on, right? So 2 days after my attempted suicide, I go to work. I had no business being there at all.
Right.
But it was just what we do. So I went to work, and it took us going to we had a dog and pony show that morning at an elementary school. And of course, me being the lowest man on the totem pole, I'm dressed up in full gear and I'm staring at all these children, and I've got 2 of my own at home. And it finally hits me. And I'm like, dude, I almost orphaned my 2 children, like right before Christmas. And my driver at the time had taken a photo of me, and that photo, I graduated from the Center of Excellence New Year's Eve, 2019. I got back to work, and what is on the cover of our department magazine? Standing up there in front of all these kids. And I've got that magazine framed up in my garage, and you know, it's a nice little reminder.
And you don't have a small department either.
Yeah, no. And the crazy thing is at that time, I didn't know of anybody from my department that went there, nor less heard about that place. And it's right across the river.
Right.
You know, which blew me away because there wasn't a lot of talk about it back then. I think I saw it in Firehouse Magazine briefly that they were talking about doing it, but amazing place. And not only do they like cover the mental health side of our job, but I mean, they were able to get through a lot of my military background and help me put to bed a lot of the things I was carrying from overseas. And then when they started and stacking, we talked about this on the show. I couldn't believe the amount of crap from my childhood that was affecting me in my adult life.
Amen, brother.
Wait, I have daddy issues?
Right.
Wait a minute. Makes no sense. Because I'm a second generation fireman to not only my dad, but I'm also second generation to my mother. So the 2 of them, you know, there's no playbook on how to parent, you know, and have 2 parents in this field, and with the shit that they were seeing and coming home, and how, you know, the weird reaction that I would get from my dad when me and my brother were roughhousing too much, and the yelling and the loud noises that I would get from that. It was really a kick in the ass when you fast forward and I've got 2 little ones of my own, and I did the exact same thing to my daughters that my dad did to me. And I was like, whoa, time out.
Yeah.
I got to fix this. But I mean, when I went to the center, I was under the impression that I was going to save my marriage. And that was my mindset. I was doing it for my wife. And Tyler, my heart goes out to you, dude. That's terrible. Cause I'm with you on the category of leaving things unopened. Cause I look at my marriage as like, it was a death, but she's still alive. That whole thing went, I never got the closure that I wanted. And I've come to the point where I've accepted it and things are okay. I mean, I'm remarried. I got an amazing wife now. But I'm glad I went down the road I went down, hit the bottom that I hit so I could rebuild from there. Cause this time around with the partner that I have, it's like, oh shit, this is what this is supposed to look like. Like everything is like on point. So, but yeah, no, the center was amazing. Once I realized that I needed to be there for me, things turned around quite a bit, but I'm in therapy each week. I'm still continuing to do that. Mentoring younger firemen to don't make the same mistake that I made and the countless other guys. I hope the fire pit is still happening at the COE because I feel like the fire pit did a lot more than just the medication and the classes that we went through throughout the day.
Going back to what you call daddy issues, and I was going through my own therapy, and she goes, "Oh yeah, this is going to go back to second grade." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's second grade." I said, "It can't be second grade. I basically wanted to tell her to shut the fuck up. It's not going back to second grade." She goes, "Yeah, take a look at it. This is why you feel this way." And she laid it out for me, and I was like, like you, Ian, I was like, I have fucking daddy issues. What the hell is that about? And it's like, I'm 50 plus years old. I don't have daddy issues. Fuck off. There I am. I have them. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And and the sooner you admit it and grapple with it. Yeah. What's that, Tyler?
Well, I was going to say a couple things that stood out there. And especially when you talk about that is, respect to her, but I'll say Dr. Jen, right? Tacoma. I don't remember her last name.
Oh yeah.
I'm accurate with that name, right?
Gregory, Dr. Gregory.
Yeah. She talks about in her, she talks about in her episodes book, the genetic trauma, and parents, moving that down to their children. I think this is a perfect example of that. Ian speaks, pretty clearly that, what developed from his childhood, from his, parents, having the career that they had and stuff. And now he looks at himself in the mirror and says, kind of doing the same thing. And it's in respect to him that he's, trying to be the end of that. And, I think that's what we have to do. And it's interesting to hear it be talked about in a first person kind of thing from him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, therapy, it's peeling those layers back of an onion, and you're the onion, and you're going through a championship fight with yourself and the therapist, basically. And you just come out bruised and battered every time, it feels like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, back when we were trying to save the marriage, I felt like every time we walked away, all fingers were getting pointed at me. And I'm like, I'm not the problem. There ain't no way I'm the problem. And it took for my whole world to get flipped upside down to realize I'm not 100% of the problem, but I was definitely putting in my share.
I put in more than my share. I'll admit it. I was more a problem than I ever wanted to admit years ago.
Oh yeah. We both.
So let me ask the real basic question of everybody, and I'll pose it to Tyler first. Just somehow you're falling first on all of these. Why did you say yes to doing the show to begin with?
Again, I think it's beneficial to selfishly myself, but more so, I want it to be beneficial to others out there, because you hear it all the time that, it's people are going to judge. I didn't want to come clean because I was afraid what the department would say, or the people in the community. And I don't give a shit. Never really have, about what people think of me. For the most part, I think people think pretty highly of me, and maybe that's part of the openness here is that, people always joke around in the area and they call me the mayor because everybody knows me.
Mhm.
And, I think that it's important for people to know that it's, people struggle, even though, the community might look at you as the hero and the popular guy and the funny guy. We've all got our weaknesses, and I'm very comfortable with calling it a weakness. And hopefully, sobriety is a strength and mental health. I want people to know that there was a somewhat hidden side of me that I was, sort of behind closed doors, that there was a different side of me that I was trying to escape a past. And, I was dealing with it the wrong way, and hopefully this is the right way. It certainly feels like the right way. I feel an inner peace. Anxiety is pretty much gone. Depression, I was never suicidal, but I think a lot of times I didn't really care if I lived or died. And I think that not having, respect and appreciation for life is some sort of, slow suicide. I thought to myself, my family will miss me, but if something were to happen, but after that pain of me being gone subsides, they'll be fine. They'll be financially fine. They'll move on with life. And that's not a good mindset to be in. I think you should wake up appreciating life and being happy every day that you're here. And what can you give back to the community and to your family and to yourself? And that's how I want to, look at my life going forward.
You say that, and some people might be taken back by it when you say, I didn't care if I lived or died, wasn't actively killing myself, but I didn't care. And I'll raise my hand and say, I'm in that camp. I've been there before where I was like, you know what? I got to an age one day and I woke up and I went, what the fuck? I never planned to be alive at this point. I never planned to live past a certain point. And I didn't have any specific plan to do anything. I was like, it's almost like I outlived a usefulness, if that makes sense. And I'm not old by any means, by any stretch of imagination, but in my head, I was like, I don't think I'll ever make it past X number. And when I did, I was like, well, fuck, what do I do now? Now I have to live this rest of this life, I guess. And I got to figure out how to do it. I don't know, genuinely more than anything. So Ian, what was the driving force for you to do the show?
I had heard about it. I knew a couple of guys in the department that had been on your show, and listening to a few other podcasts. I'm a big advocate now for this. I had somebody tell me like, dude, you got to tell your story. And that was more or less, I think, how we connected. Cause I was one of those guys. I mean, coming up in the military, the whole 22 a day, right?
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I'm like, dude, how selfish are these guys? Like I was a prick. Like anytime anybody with the thought of suicide, and I had a couple soldiers that, had put a gun in their mouth right in front of me. And I'm like, do it. Let me help you pull the trigger if you really want to leave everybody who cares about you. And then fast forward, my world falls apart and, 3,000 miles away from home. I got, marriages falling apart, and I didn't know I was drowning. I was literally in the deep end of the pool, drowning. And, thank God that, the suicide attempt didn't work. And thank God for those that were around me to help, throw that safety line, as I like to call it. I just kind of wanted to get it out there. Like, you're not weak. Like, we all see and are exposed to so much shit through this career. And, you're coming to this career with whatever luggage you're bringing from your childhood and your past, and you're coming to the fire service. And then, you're expecting to be this, this hardcore dude or, hardcore girl where you don't want to show weakness because you think it's, it's a reflection on you. But, we're just like everybody else. We just, chose this career and this path. And, some of us were born into it. Some of us were called to it. You even have those that are here because the paycheck and the stability looks cool, whatever those kudos are, or whatever your your reasons are. But, yeah, if you don't address all the dark seated stuff of this job and what you see and what you smell and the horrible things you're exposed to, it's only going to come out in other ways. In mine, unfortunately, I had guys coming out of the military that were getting prescribed every medication under the sun from the VA. And these guys are they're homeless now, or they're dead already. They weren't fixing the problem. They were just masking it. And then you had other guys with alcohol, which, I mean, it's a coping tool. I've never walked down the path of like, I've never been blackout drunk. Like it was always kind of a social thing for me because I'm a social guy. I like to be in groups of people. I don't do this crap by myself. You know, I've always got, you know, it's one or two and that's it. But I was coping with it, and it was getting to the point where it was out of control. And that's kind of what got me on my motorcycle. I had no business being on my bike, and I took my bike into oncoming, and I was just going to see what was going to happen. And an 18-wheeler was coming down the hill, and I was clicking gears, and I was going to eat the front end of that thing. And God, whoever, man, the bike, I got around a concrete median to go back in the correct lane of traffic. But it was wild to even think back to that because of the life I have and the two little girls that I have, and what my mind was telling me that, like you said, you didn't think about suicide, but the fact is you thought that you could go, that you could leave, and you know, yeah, your family will miss you, but that's about it. I mean, that's what my mind was telling me as well, is the fact that my next wife can take care of my daughters. The new man that replaced me is going to be just fine for them. And it's wild to even still say out loud to this day. Like, and it's weird where we're at today, man. Like, I can shake hands with this guy now. I can still give my ex-wife a hug. You know, the chick had surgery yesterday and I'm making sure she's good. So a whole different level today than what we were 5 years ago. But I attribute a lot of it to the COE and then just continuing the counseling and being aware of my day-to-day operations.
Bryan, you kind of resisted me for a bit before you came on the show. And I think we saw each other at a baby shower, if I remember correctly. And I asked you about coming on and you were like, no, You denied me the first time, at least. It was probably the first two times I asked you. So why at that point did you decide you wanted to come on and share the story? Because you've got one hell of a story. You got 34 years in the fire service, and you saw a lot of shit.
The biggest part was just not ready to talk publicly.
Yeah.
To, sit down and just let go of everything and put it out there for everybody that's listening to know. There was a fear of it, the anxiety of it. Anxiety is a huge thing that I battle even now. But it was just, I wasn't ready to talk. And I honestly can't even say that even when we did that first interview or the shows, that I was still ready to talk. I know I put a lot of stuff out there, but there was that in my mind that I'm just not ready to do this. I'm not ready to do this. But like I had said, if there is one person that takes something from what I said and makes their life better, then it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. I mean, I even left out, didn't hit on everything because of the fear of doing it.
Right.
And, a couple of guys had talked about suicide. Prior to going to COE, that thought had started to cross my mind. And after I came back from the COE, one of the hardest things that I had was getting integrated back into the firehouse or getting back on duty. Our department put me on light duty. And I was sent out to our fire academy and I had no responsibilities, nothing. I didn't have a direction. I didn't have anything. I reported to the captain of the health and safety office and I'd call him up and say, hey, I'm going home. And I'd go to the bar and I'd drink all afternoon. There was nothing. There was no direction for me. And it was even harder to get back into the firehouse and start getting back into the groove of stuff. And I wanted to, but during that time, I started becoming angrier and angrier and angrier. And this is still even going through therapy. And with that anger also, there was a lot of loneliness, and the suicidal thoughts actually started coming up even harder on me. I had it planned out. I knew what I was going to do. I knew where I was going to go. It wasn't going to be anywhere that any family or friends were going to find me. The problem I started battling then was somebody's going to find me.
Yeah.
And when somebody finds me, I'm putting them through the same thing that I'm putting myself, that I went through.
Yeah.
And that's fucked up. I can't do that to somebody else. But I also started looking at, because of the things that happened, you know, with my daughter and my granddaughter, and her, I don't even want to use the word father because the man doesn't deserve that title. My granddaughter needed somebody. She needed a family. And we started becoming closer and closer, and I couldn't leave her. So while I was battling those thoughts and had it planned out, there was other things that were pulling me away from it, which is good. And I can honestly say that, I mean, one of the biggest things that made me realize that, hey, I don't want to leave this world. I don't want to go anywhere. It's not my time, is my granddaughter, because I knew she needed me.
Mike, I saw your story, and I forgot where it was, on Facebook, I think. I saw your story of trying to do your run to the Center of Excellence.
Yes, sir.
And so I reached out to you, and I think you responded pretty quickly and said, yeah, I'll come on. But was there any other purpose behind coming on?
Just like everybody else, you know, I was doing it for myself, and you know, just like the other gentleman said, if we can, you know, if we can just reach one, and pardon my mouth, I curse like a sailor, one fucking asshole that can relate to us and try to prevent them from going down that road, that, you know, all of us have this different fucking story, you know, but, you know, to try to help them out, you know, so coming on your podcast, it was way out of my comfort zone because just like anybody else, I hid my shit for years. And, you know, the only ones that were truly seeing it were, you know, my wife and kids, but my department had no idea until I walked in one morning and I was going through DTs. And you know, as a lieutenant, you know, I'm a supervisor. I had to walk into my other lieutenant's office and I said, hey man, I'm going through DTs. I got to get the fuck out of here, you know, and that cracked open that fucking egg, of this fucking roller coaster that I've been going through ever since. You know, like I said, my story and what I want people to hear and grasp, just like I'd mentioned earlier, I'm not fucking fixed. I've had some bad nights and days since all this shit came to light, since I left the center, but I refuse to fucking quit. You know, and, you know, I've had doctors try to throw, you know, just like the gentleman was talking about these veterans coming out, they're just throwing these medications at these individuals, you know, and again, I agree. That's just the surface level shit. That's just masking the symptoms of, you know, what the true fucking cause is of all this stuff. And my personal revelation, you know, that I'm starting to come to grips with and still having problems accepting is I had this horrible fucking childhood. My foundation was fucking shit. And here I am, 46 years old, finally realizing that, you know, that foundation that was laid for me was so fucked up. I mean, it wasn't, you know, as bad as some, but it's like, holy shit, now I know why I am the way I am, why, you know, I've done things the way I did things. And like I said, if I can share that, you know, with other people and somebody says, you know, I can relate to this guy, let me reach out for some help, because that was, you know, I'm sure I can speak for everybody in this room. You know, I didn't want help. I was forced to get it. You know, I was in that hole. You know, my wife and I had separated. I hadn't seen my kids in a couple of weeks, which had never happened before. I had left the fire department. I resigned early, and took a job as a flight paramedic. And I thought that was the answer, was just to change my career, and ended up having to walk away from that. And again, just, it forced me to finally reach out and say, I'm in a hole. I need help. And again, like everybody, like most of the guys in here, I wasn't suicidal, but again, I didn't care if I lived or died either. If I was killed in the line of duty or killed off, it didn't matter to me. I didn't have that purpose and that drive, to want to keep going. And another reason for me coming back on here is that, again, I've had a lot of fucking failures since all this stuff, and I want people to understand that, unless you're a unicorn, you're going to have some bad nights. You're going to have some bad days. I dare say that I've walked my ass right back in the fucking liquor store, on several different occasions, after being in DTs, I dare say 3 times in my fucking life, and it's like, I keep failing, but I keep succeeding. I keep failing, I keep succeeding. And I refuse to fucking quit. And like I said, that's what I want people to hear. That even if you have a bad night, even if you have that fucking failure, you got to still get up and keep pressing fucking forward.
Well, a couple of y'all have mentioned it, and it's that roller coaster. It's the word roller coaster. And I think that's what people don't realize, is that just because you go to therapy doesn't mean you're cured. It's not a linear thing. You don't go from hurting to fixed. You go from hurting to learning how to deal with hurt.
Exactly.
And I think that's, Tyler, you were one of the first ones to reach out to me and go, man, I just didn't tell my truth on this show. And what forced you at this point to say, okay, this is my truth and this is what I have to fix and this is what I have to face and I have to admit to? What forced you to do that?
I think it was just the opportunity to cleanse my soul, sort of, and just be open with the world. And one of the things that kind of stands out to me in this group of gentlemen that we have here today is we've got, over 100 years of service combined with all of us. And we've got, a veteran, we've got firefighters, paramedics, captains, lieutenants. We have all these, they're all sort of the same, but all a little bit different. But we're all here finally, opening up, cleansing the soul and saying that I get it. And I think it's a great culture shift that we're looking at, by saying that, I shouldn't say I hate the phrase, but it's become so cliche as, it's not okay it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
And I get that, but it's such a shallow saying. And like now we're saying, here's my not okay. Here's my alcoholism. Here's my depression, my anxiety. Here's all these things. And I understand it. As the position that I'm in now as a supervisor, when I have people that, call in sick, I tell them, I don't need to know why you're calling in sick, but just so you know, if everything's not, if you need something, reach out. Cause I know that there was times where I called in sick, and it was mental health that I was calling in for. That's not what I told them, but it was mental health. I couldn't face the day. I couldn't put anything else in my closet that day. And I tell people that now because it's important for them to know that, you're home with the flu, but if you need something, reach out, because I get it. I've been there. And I think that what a group like this opening up and telling the world is facing that and telling people that, we've been there, and the old days of, just throw more shit in the closet and just deal with it it's unhealthy. And I hope that it's gone for good, and doing things like this, we can rid ourselves of that mentality.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. And I'm going to throw the floor and just get it open to everybody. You can just chime in whenever you want. But up till recently, and I mean recently, like 2 months ago, I've heard from a chief's mouth say, we don't do mental health days. You're either sick with something or you're not. We don't do mental health days. And that just is so tone deaf to me to say we don't do mental health days, because that ignores two things: that there's a need for a mental health day, and that you're just not going to acknowledge that person has something going on.
Well, with in our department, I actually had somebody come up to me and tell me that a battalion chief was sitting around a table talking to everybody, and he said, "Oh, if you got mental health problems, you don't belong in this job.
Yeah,
you don't belong here." And that was his attitude. And this is also well, I'm not going to.
He's a prime candidate for the COE.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And
that motherfucker's hiding some shit.
And I couldn't believe I heard this, especially this person was in a job that was supposed to help people.
Yeah.
And there he is out there talking this bullshit.
Yeah.
A battalion chief telling a group of firefighters that you don't belong here. If you've got any type of mental health issues, you're going to have something. You're going to carry something from this job. Well, how it affects you, it affects everybody differently. Some people more than others. But yeah, that blew my mind that this individual said that crap, and I wanted to strangle him for it when I heard that.
The majority of us bring shit to this job. Forget earning stuff on the job. Just like Ian said, he talks about daddy issues. I talked about them. The same thing. We're all bringing something to this job.
Yeah, I mean, getting into the fire service, that was an escape. That I found the fire service to be family. Yeah, because I didn't feel I had family at the time when I was growing up.
Right.
Because of my parents' divorce and stuff. And the fire service, I found family. So, yeah, I definitely brought stuff out of childhood into the job.
Yeah, and that's where those, what they call the ACEs scores come in, the adverse childhood experiences come into play, because a lot of us have a score of multiple numbers instead of zeros or ones. Yeah, I realized. Go ahead. No, you're good. Go for it.
Well, I realized, like you were saying, you were going into the fire service to escape the shit that was going on at home. Well, yeah, I fell in love with the fire department at 3 years old. Like when my dad put me on his fire engine, I was like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then as I got older, I never realized that I was just chasing after my father's acceptance. And that's why I went to the fire department, and it's like, when that finally hit me, holy shit, and it's coming back out of that. And I totally forgot where I was going. I was blanked.
That's all right. It'll hit you in the middle of another sentence.
It will.
So, all right. I guess where I want to go with it is, you talked about it's tough to be honest and open because we have trust issues. And did all of the four of you experience that same thing? That trust issue of hesitancy to be open and hesitancy to be completely honest with a therapist or family or whatever it was?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still have trust issues, but again, me personally, I'm forcing myself to do this.
To do the full and open honesty with a therapist or family or what?
Yep. Therapist, family, coming on this podcast, talking to people at my department, and letting them know that the fucked up shit that I'm going through, that I've been through, yeah.
Ian, I saw you shaking or nodding your head yes there.
Yeah, no, it was the same thing. The trust issues were huge. Like, one, I never had never really had like a good situation with a therapist growing up, because it was always pointing at me. Right. So then, as I got older, matured, whatnot, started realizing that, a lot of women that I thought were attractive started looking at me. And internally what I was doing was I was validating my own bullshit with the fact that this woman likes me for me, well, cool. I don't need to go work on myself. I'm getting the validation right here. And that was my niche, I guess. Like, it wasn't drinking, it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't drugs, it was women. And I was getting that validation through them. So yeah, no, I had a major trust issue with it and didn't want to look at myself in the mirror at all. And, like when I said, when I hit rock bottom, it forced me to look at me and dig into me a lot, and I'm continuing that road daily. Cause I mean, you have things that flare up here and there, but it's like, I recognize it now and I'm able to stop it, tenfold before anything gets out of hand as far as inappropriate goes, or even towing that line. I don't even touch it. I remove myself completely.
So all of you talked about the inability to be open and honest in a therapeutic setting. And I'll admit to the same thing. There are things that I just say, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that, or shit, what will someone think of me for talking about or saying this? So you're talking to someone who's going to start therapy. What do you tell them? How do you get them to get that buy-in that is so desperately needed to get the results from therapy that you need?
Well,
I can't even speak on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've yet to, I've thought heavily about starting therapy. And just haven't kind of like, pulled the trigger on that, for lack of a better word. But, it feels like I guess it's probably tearing the Band-Aid off of a Pandora's box kind of thing. I'm feeling pretty good right now. I think I just want to ride the highway a little bit before we rip into that one.
Right.
But, I think like one of the biggest things is, if I had to probably look at from the outside in, is that openness. And, you have to be honest, because it does no good. It's going through the motions and it's trying to sell it that, I'm doing therapy. But if you're not being open, you're not doing therapy, right? You're paying somebody to play a magic trick for 60 minutes. And you've got to truly embrace the process, I think, and open up and clean the closet and work at becoming a better person. I think, we've got Stack, you're fresh into retirement, and I want you to go into that and enjoy that and be free from the past and have your years of service be rewarding, that you wake up now free from what the career did to you. And that's what we have to do, right? We didn't do this to suffer through retirement and deal with the things that broke us down. So, be open, be honest, clean the closet, and, ride into the sunset of retirement.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you on that one. The biggest thing is, being honest with yourself, thinking that you need it, but it comes down to finding the right therapist. I've had to go through my fair share, where I told my story, and the woman is breaking down in front of me, listening to what I'm saying, and then I turn into the therapist for her.
Yeah, and why are you going to add more to that if she's doing that?
Exactly. So
Jesus.
It was like, that hit me in the face, and I'm like, okay, well, this one ain't going to work. And then the woman that I've been, working with now for the last year is a hard ass. Like, the chick will throw shit at me when I'm not being honest. And she looks like a for me, which she goes, I don't know why you pay for this treatment. And this is exactly what I mean. She's a complete asshole, but I love her to death.
Right.
And so, every new rookie we get, I open up the floodgates. I kind of have them sit down one-on-one with them, just mano, and kind of open it up a little bit to where, don't do what I did. The old school ways of just suck it up and drive on. We got to get away from that completely. Being honest with these rookies, and just kind of giving them a nice little template of, hey, this job is rewarding. It is awesome, but it's not all who you are. You're not just a fireman. You're a dad. You're a surfer. You enjoy motorcycle riding. You're involved in the community, whatever it may be. There's more to you than just this job. And that's, for the longest time, I was consumed by it. Everybody knew I was a fireman because I was that typical dude that rocked a t-shirt everywhere I went. But no, it's making it to where you can get to where Stack's at, retire and enjoy life. And, this just be an awesome chapter of this long timeline that you're here on this earth. That's kind of where I navigate towards with these guys.
Bryan, I know you had something to say.
Yeah, well, he kind of said it right there, was finding a therapist or somebody that you can actually talk to and you can relate to. I went through quite a few of them and was never able to have that connection or felt comfortable with them. Unlike the guy that I've got now, I can call him up or send him an email and I'm in there within a few days. I could sit down and talk to him, but the other thing is I made a decision. I'm going to open up. I'm going to do this for myself. I can't get anything out of this if I'm not open and honest. All it is me going in there and paying him just to stare at each other,
Right.
or to beat around the bush. I had to make that decision that I've got to be open and honest with it and talk. But the other thing is having that comfort level with the person that you're talking to. And you may have to go through several of them before you find one.
Right.
And that's okay. Do it. Go out there and search for them. The other thing, like everybody and talks about, making it to that retirement. I'll be honest, retirement brings on a whole new, I don't want to say problems, but feelings popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest feelings is being lonely now, because you're not at the firehouse.
Right.
You're not with that family. You're not with your group of friends anymore. I used to look forward to going and sitting at the table in the bay and having, just sitting there bullshitting. I looked forward to dinners at night with the crew. You don't have that anymore. You've got that with your family, which is good, but there's that big part that is missing. And, I know, telephones work both ways.
Yeah.
But the phone doesn't ring as much anymore either. So
Right.
You don't hear from people as much anymore. And, it's good, you get together with somebody or a couple of people and go out to lunch here or there. That's fantastic. But separating from the fire service, that is something that you actually got to kind of prepare for, because it does become lonely for those first couple of years and it's hard to get used to. And I could say, like, this last year, I've been so busy with family things that me picking up the phone and calling somebody, I was just exhausted after dealing with family stuff that I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
Although I knew, deep down, I need to call, my best friend, or I need to call, somebody. I'm trying to skip over names here. Wanting to make that phone call, but just being so physically and mentally exhausted, I didn't have the energy to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Or to even be happy about talking, because then I would go right into what is going on in my life right now, what I'm dealing with. And I didn't want that conversation to go that way.
Right.
I just want to have a bullshit conversation, sit down, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah type of stuff. Not, well, I had to go over and, send my mom to the hospital today because she was having a stroke.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. But yeah, retirement can be good, but you've got to be also aware that with retirement, it is a separation from the fire service. It is a separation from everybody that you care about. And you even said it in one of your monologues at the beginning of the podcast about being worried of something happening to the guys that you worked with.
Yeah, that's a very real feeling.
That was a huge fear.
Yeah.
And that still pops into my head.
Yeah.
I've even had nightmares of that stuff since I've been retired.
Yeah.
Of something happening to the guys I worked with. It still happens. And those are things that you got to be prepared for. And that's something that, my therapist and I have discussed, because it was really bothering and eating at me about, the retirement part of it and what came with retirement.
I know for myself with therapy, I got to a point where I knew what she would say before I even go into the session, you know, and I knew I was going to go, okay, this is what's on my mind. And I knew that Lisa sometimes listens to my episodes. So Lisa would look at me and say, well, what do you think? Or what did you do? Or and I hear your voice. You tell me to do this. She goes, why didn't you do it? And I was like, well, because sometimes I just need to hear you say it before I kick myself in the ass to fucking do it. And it's the same thing. You all have mentioned, you found someone that you can be that open with, that kind of give and take, and she'll call you or he'll call you on your bullshit. That's what I think we all need, because we're so fucking hard headed in our own lives, just in general. And I think for me, it also goes back to, it's hard to be vulnerable to anybody because we're not supposed to be weak. We're just not. We buy into this bullshit that you're not supposed to be weak. How can we be big bad firefighters if we're weak? But I'll argue the fact that to be vulnerable and to be open with a therapist or a loved one or whatever is a kind of strength that people don't understand.
Well, and the fire service pushes that you can't be weak type of stuff. But it also, for me, I heard it from growing up.
Yeah.
And it was drilled into my head.
Yeah.
You don't need to cry. There's no reason for you to cry.
Yeah.
And that was, something that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Don't be weak. Don't show emotion.
Yeah. I got that from my dad when he was in the house, because his dad was the old Northeast Massachusetts hard ass, Irish dad, beat the shit out of him for whatever. And then he didn't know how to parent when he became a parent. So he did the same kind of things to me, or to my sister. So yeah, you're taught that, and then it's reinforced in a career like this.
Yeah. What it breaks down to is it's not that they told you not to cry, because in all reality, it hurt them to see you cry. So
Yeah.
it was better telling the child, don't cry. So, it wouldn't bring out emotion in the adult.
Yeah.
It's same thing on my end.
I see people nodding their heads. So I think that we've all had some kind of similar experiences. So what's different today for everybody? Why do you think some of these revelations come to light for you today? What's different?
The big thing with me is, like I said, making myself vulnerable, with everything. We talked about the therapist, just like anybody else. I went through a gamma of them before I finally found one. Again, it would call me out on my bullshit. I haven't seen her in a while, but I've been itching to get back in and see her. But the vulnerability is, like I said, that's the big difference for me today. As comfortable as it is, I'm slowly starting to embrace the shit out of it. And again, not truly try to not care what other people think about me. When they, hear me talk or I share some of my background with them.
So can you all agree with what Mike said there?
I think that one of the really important things for me is, I'll never forget my first couple of months on the department. We had a motor vehicle crash where 2 young men died, and it was a really traumatic death. And we got back to the station, and one of the senior guys was joking around about how the kid's brain looked like macaroni all over the road. And I was like, this is fucking wild that we're talking about it like this. And I can understand the protective mechanism of making light of a bad situation. But I was the young guy on the department. I remember exactly where I was standing in the fire department, who said it, how it was said. And I was shocked that somebody was talking like that about somebody that had just lost their life. And I get it. It didn't, affect me negatively, but it stuck with me. And everybody on that department had more years of service than I did. They were all my senior. And the vibe that I got from that is that we joke about it. We don't act like it affected us. We just, on to the next thing. And now, being 41 years old and being a supervisor within the department, it's okay to joke. We can have fun. We still do it. We've all got that twisted sense of humor and that darkness about us. But also, I want to be the leader that I kind of wish I would have seen back in the day, where we joke about it, but we also face the reality that that was not a normal situation. And it doesn't have to be a traumatic death of two young men. It can be anything. It can not even be a fatality. But it just might be the event. And we look at it as abnormal. You don't, respect to every career out there and every type of lifestyle. But you're not seeing podcasts of a banker, bankers coming on and saying like, that was a fucked up shift. That was a traumatic shift that I had.
I had to count out all those dollar bills.
We've got a really, right. We've got a really fucking unique thing going here. And it is abnormal, really. If you look at the big picture, I don't want to, bang on my chest and say we're heroes, but we are. And the kids look up to us, and it's hard to show weakness, and it's difficult to, my son now is 17 years old, and he's talking about maybe wanting to be a firefighter paramedic. And I'm like, I don't know if I want him to do that.
Yeah.
I know the damage that it's done to me. I know the great insurance that he'll have and the great schedule that he'll have and the awesome retirement, but at what cost? What expense has it come to in my life? Which is a wild thing to have to evaluate, that I love what I do, but I don't know if I want my son to do it.
You talked about other professions, and when you started talking about, you see this gray matter and you see brains, that I look around, I look at the screen, and I look at Bryan, and I think that I bet you that this is the only conversation I've ever been in where we can all go, yeah, I know what that looks like. I've been there. I've washed it off of my boots, and that's that, whether we like to admit it or not, that fucks with your head.
That's that wall of Polaroids, my friend.
Yeah.
And it comes back. It comes back at you as soon as you close your eyes, turn the lights off. And that's just one aspect, of what we've all seen over the years.
Right.
And, I like what he said about not wanting his child. My son wanted to go into, the fire service for the longest time. And when he made his mind up that he didn't want to, I was hurt a little bit, because I actually was excited for him to do it. And that's all he had talked about growing up. But I was also happy that he was not going into it, because I didn't want him to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
And same thing, like my daughter, she had looked into going into becoming a 911 operator and dispatcher at one point. And I'm glad she, decided not to do that. This field is hard, and I think the days of people wanting their children to follow in their footsteps is kind of going, because we see what this job has done to us. Now, is it possible to get into this job and also be proactive and make sure that you can retire with a clean mind and clean heart? Oh yeah, definitely. But it also takes some work on, your part to do that. And I guess that's what the great thing about this podcast is that hopefully we're laying that foundation and putting that out there for those people that are listening to it, to be proactive in their life, in their mental and physical health, to make sure when they do make it to retirement, they're not carrying this baggage with them. Or if they do, they know what to do with it and how to handle it, or who to talk to get help with it. So it's not, it doesn't manifest itself to the point where you're just at the lowest of lows, drinking, thinking about suicide, not giving a damn whether or not you wake up in the morning. You want to wake up in retirement and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where it starts. I mean, like, none of us are weak. I think every one of you men is strong as hell and a hell of a leader in all reality, because this is what we're doing. This is how the buck stops. It stops with guys that have gotten to the point of hitting the lowest of lows and rebuilding and leading by example. Because none of these young guys do it. And I don't want the listeners thinking like, damn, the fire service is terrible because these guys get to the end of their careers and it's shit, right? It's no, this can be very rewarding. The shit we do on a daily basis does make a positive effect for others, and that's what we're here for. We want to help people, but it comes back to us looking in the mirror, making sure that we're good on this end, not only as the firemen, but, fathers, husbands, wives, whatever. And it comes back to, I had problems being by myself because once I was by myself, certain shadows, certain noises would take me back. And, it's the amount of work that I've done now. I mean, I'm making a point to do something for myself, if not once a week, but maybe every other week where it's just me, self-care for myself to make me, happy, make me a good dad. And that's why I've continued with the therapy, because I can tell when I've missed a session. My wife can tell when I've missed a session, but, it's writing those notes down, journaling, that I think that's really helped me out the most. Because once you put it on paper, it kind of helps you let go of it. You know what I mean? But it's taking care of yourself, having that circle of guys around you to keep you accountable, and going back to the counseling aspect, we all have those trust issues. And I'm sure every department here has got a peer support team for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But those individuals, there might be some dudes on there that are good, solid dudes, but there are also some other guys on there that are just checking a box for the next promotional test.
Yep.
So it's hard, like, is this going to come back and bite me in the ass? You know what I mean? So I've got 4 dudes, buddies of mine on the West Coast that I talk to on a daily basis. And that works for me, but also at the firehouse where we have morning lineup. Morning lineup goes a little bit longer than normal. It's not just the officer gives the task for the day and then boom, everybody goes to work. No, we have breakfast. And I can tell now when one dude's off or another dude's having a hard time, just off of our daily interaction with one another. Not everybody doesn't disappear to the 4 corners of the firehouse, so it's taking that time, investing in your crew, knowing who your officers, if their spouse, wife, kids, whatever, knowing those names of those individuals, when you're calling them, it's not just, hey, the wife did this, it pissed me off. No, dude, what's your wife's name? It's buying that ground to where when you have a fireman at work that finally shows that he's having a hard time, you can just pull him, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee. Let's go walk around the firehouse. Dude, you're good. It's that small stuff that I think that has a huge buy-in on the other end, where we could get this ball to stop with all of us that are finally admitting shit and, and paving that way for the new generation. Cause yeah, like we said, we all got that dark humor. Those jokes are still going to fly. And I had a pretty gnarly trap job 2 days ago. I was first on scene. It was an iPhone notification, which I don't know if you guys have had those yet, but 9 times out of 10, it's BS. You get there, there's nobody there. Well, we drove by this at 9:00 at night, didn't see anybody. We turn around, I'm about to hit in service, and my emergency flashers catch the tail lights of this car. This kid was 100 foot into the wood line. You would have not seen him. He would have died if we didn't stop. And as soon as you smell that blood and all, dude, every memory pops up. I journaled about it, this past week, just kind of, because we did save his life, there was a positive outcome on this, but the back end of us joking about going in service, us joking about this is going to be a BS run, that played with me a little bit. And that's what I'm kind of, where do I file this? But it had a positive outcome and we saved this kid's life. Yeah.
I think that I know the answer to these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. I'm going to ask it anyway. Excuse me. What have you learned in this time, but since you've been on the show and then today, what have you learned and what would you do differently? Anybody can start. I'm not going to pick on anybody.
Being true.
Um, I don't want to take your word, but I think it's what I was just being honest and truthful and open and showing the vulnerability of us as firefighters, paramedics, men, humans, spouses, fathers. And again, just addressing we're human. It's normal to have shit build up, and it's okay to fucking talk about it and make it normal. And I think I ran from that and didn't want to, show that weakness. And I think the perfect analogy kind of, or like the example of it is, when people cry, what's the first thing they do? I'm sorry. They apologize for fucking crying. Like, it's not something we should be sorry about, right? Like, but you see it every time someone cries, they say, I'm sorry. And they hide themselves. Like, fucking show it, show that emotion, be open. I fucking don't know where this shift change in my life came from, but I'm happy that it's here because, all my friends, they kind of pick on me. They're like, fucking, where did this come? I'm like, my Facebook profile is like, my bio is like, I want to live my life with an annoying amount of empathy and kindness. And I really mean it. Like, that's who I want to be, is just this fucking ball of emotion. And like, I'm here for it,
Ian, what about you?
Repeat the question, Woolworth.
Well, I mean, just like between the time you came on the show, because it's been a while since you first came on that show, and now, what have you learned? What would you do differently?
So thinking back, gosh, what was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was fresh with my girlfriend then, like only a couple months in, or my wife, as my girlfriend back then. And I was still, I'm not getting married again. I'm not going to go down this road again. And it took, I will say, the therapy helped me let go of a lot of shit, helped me realize that, hey, I'm not going to change my dad, right? Like, he is who he is. And you got to learn to not put yourself, with those expectations for him to meet his or whatever it may be, like I need to be in control of my wheelhouse and live my life to the fullest. And, shortly after our show, I got injured in the line of duty, January of last year, and, hurt my back lifting a patient, and I was off for almost 11 months. And that was a struggle. And it goes back to I'm a fireman. This is what I need to do. And I mean, even the Center of Excellence didn't teach me that part. It was my girlfriend at the time telling me that there's way more to me than just my job, because I lost the sense of identity. I couldn't pick my kids up, couldn't ride my motorcycle, couldn't, work out. So like everything that I coped with on my day to day, which I thought was okay, really got taken away. And it took a lot of me looking internally to, where do I go from here? I started looking at, what am I going to do next type of job. And, that helped tremendously. And the love that this woman showed me, the love that, my girls showed her, to where, they had a relationship outside of me, really opened up the whole floodgates as far as, there was a lot of stuff I didn't work on back then. And throughout this last year really showed me, there's a lot more than this job, and just trying to, pave the way forward on how I do my day-to-day operations now. And that's coming here, just being an example to somebody else. And hopefully it reaches one dude somewhere to, brighten his day.
What about you, Mike?
I wish I would have made myself more vulnerable in the beginning, when this whole journey started for me, and even before that. That's what I would do. That's what I wish I would have done differently. Again, me sitting here, talking to you all and sharing, alone that, I've, since all my stuff, I've walked my ass back in the liquor store on several occasions. I can't believe I'm doing that, because, again, that's admitting to my failures. So yeah, again, just like these other cats that went to the center. I mean, if I would have made myself just a little bit more vulnerable back then, I think I would have taken more from that place. And maybe from then until now would have been a little bit easier on me at least, and probably easier on my wife and kids as well. But yeah, the vulnerability and facing my shit a little bit earlier probably would have helped.
Bryan?
I think one of the biggest things when you asked that question that popped into my mind was the alcohol, any type of substance abuse. It's one thing to go out and have a drink with the guys or at an event or whatever, but knowing when to stop. But when you're going out and you have that first taste of the beer, bourbon, whatever it is that you have, and it tastes so good, and all of a sudden everything just starts feeling like it's going away.
Yeah.
And that is what's replacing what's going on in your mind, fighting that substance abuse. Since I've been sober and haven't had anything to drink, it has helped me to actually sit back and deal with things now, to deal with what's in my mind, not going, okay, well, I'm having this bad thought, I'm going to go drink and get rid of it. Is giving me clarity, so to speak. That has really helped out a lot. That was a big hurdle, and I really never I kind of thought it was a problem, but I never thought it was a problem. I always thought, oh yeah, no big deal. I can stop drinking any point in time I want. But it got to the point where I was planning my day around going to the pub. I could not wait for that first drink. And, I knew it was going to help me sleep at night. Well, no, that stopped after a little while. I knew it was going to help drown out things that I was thinking. No, that stopped after a little while. It just compounded. It made it worse. It made my feelings even worse. And then just the physical effects that alcohol brought on for me made me feel worse. And now when I think about, well, I need a drink, this day is sucked, the first thing that pops into my mind is how I felt at night. After I got done drinking, after that last beer and then got home, how did I feel at night? And I don't want to go back to that, because physically I started feeling like crap. From feeling like I was having AFib to, even getting so drunk to where I was at home throwing up for hours. I don't want any of that back. And it didn't do any damn good, and it didn't solve any problems.
Yeah, no, I kind of stumbled on a year of sobriety because I opened my big mouth and said, hey, do you think we can do a year? And I got my bet called, and so I'm 10 months in, and I know it's the right thing to do. I like to say that I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need alcohol, but then there are times when I see Ian move his head and I see the bottle behind him, and I go, I know exactly what that bottle is, and I know exactly what it would taste like when I crack it open, and I call it this. There's this the summer times where you sit out on a deck and you've got a drink in your hand and you've got some music going, and I like to say it's just a feeling of a glass in my hand. That's bullshit. I like the feeling of that liquor going down my throat. I enjoyed it, but I also paid a price for it. I don't want to pay that price. And so I think that I've gotten to the point with alcohol that I just don't want, it's just not worth it to me. And will I ever drink again? I don't know. I have no idea. I won't make any promises on that, but right now that's where I am. I want to talk about vulnerability a little bit, because I agree with what all of you've said. It's so tough to be vulnerable. And even me, from this standpoint of this pedestal I have with the show and the platform, I preach vulnerability, but then the day before my last day, I texted the guys. I was like, listen, I'm going to cry. You're going to make fun of me, whatever. And I had to prime, in my mind, I was priming them, but that's complete bullshit. I was priming myself because I knew what that last day was going to bring. And sure enough, I fucking cried. I cried like a baby. And I did what you said. I was like, I I said, sorry, I can't believe I'm crying. It's like, of course you can believe you're crying. You're walking out, and I said it in my intro, I don't know, the week or so after, I said, you're walking out of a home knowing the next time you come back, you'll knock on the door. And it's a weird feeling. And so the vulnerability is so key. You have to allow yourself to feel and experience, and let other people know that that's what you're feeling and experiencing. And they'll understand it's okay to be that way at any point in life with any of this stuff. So the vulnerability is key. And I think that once you learn that and you accept it and you kind of find a little bit of comfort in that discomfort, you make leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it's hard to bring that vulnerability or to let your guard down.
Well, of course
I mean, for years, from my childhood on up, I would not let my guard down. I was always on guard with what I said, what I did, waiting for something to come back on me, waiting for someone to use something against me. And it's still, even today, I know you got to let that vulnerability down. You got to let things go in order to get better. But in the back of your head, it's still telling you those defense mechanisms are popping up going, if you say this, it's going to come back on you.
Yeah.
So-and-so's, or somebody's going to use it. You don't know who, but somebody's going to use it against you. And it's a struggle. I mean, it's hard to get over that.
Somebody else had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to somebody mentioned a roller coaster earlier.
I think everybody said it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the wild roller coaster that we chose, and it's what's the definition of insanity?
Yeah, same thing.
The same without result, right? So it takes that you looking in the mirror, owning your shit, and then moving forward. And after it's like, for me, I could care less. I think other than just my small family, as far as what people think of me. And, I know what avenue I've walked down. I know the bad decisions I've made. I know the good friendships that I had that I burned. And it's sad. It sucks to look back and, know that relationship will never be the same, because of your actions, and it's being okay with that, putting that behind you and just hoping best wishes for them. Yeah, it's just looking in the mirror, owning yourself and getting off that roller coaster and just living every day to the fullest. I wouldn't change a thing right now in my life. My girls are awesome. I've got one of them full time now, which is great. She chose to come live with dad because my household is calm. It's structured, which is great for her. And she had her own mental health issue, and I've been the leading front for her, and an example for her to get through all the shit that I did because of how I followed my father, so it's owning some stuff to where that little girl had a rough 5 years, of her life, and dad's doing every damn thing I can to make it better.
Yeah. I remember when we spoke, I think she was getting her own care at that time, wasn't she?
She was in treatment. Yeah. That one broke me.
Yeah.
And,
I remember talking about it.
Yeah. That one right there was the, I got to fix me like right now. And, thankfully enough, with all the counseling that I was going through at the time to be a better dad for her, that is the woman that is now still my counselor, so she called me out on a lot of my bullshit, and, your 14-year-old daughter calling you saying, Dad, I want to come live with you because I can't handle the chaos over here. I'm doing something right.
When your kids tell you something, it hits a lot differently, because my kids are adults, but my daughter told me, I said something about what kind of a parent I was to my daughter, and I got hit with what you don't ever really want to hear was, well, and I went, wait, and the fucking brakes like squealed. I was like, what? Wait a second. And she laid it out for me a little bit, and I was like, oh, I never realized that. And then I realized I know what I did, because I did what my dad did in some cases, and I learned from him, and I didn't do as good a job as I thought, and that'll wake you up a little bit.
Big time. And I mean, my wedding was 2 months ago, and both of my daughters gave speeches at the wedding. Yeah. And I mean, they stole the show from the maid of honor and the best man. and hearing my two girls give a speech. And then I had grown men coming over to me crying that their children love them as much as my daughter. I'm like, I was blown away. Like,
Yeah.
just a mess. So yeah, I'm doing something right.
Well, we've been going on for about an hour and a half now, and I know we all have lives. So I'm going to throw it around the room again and just ask for some last thoughts, and then we'll wrap this up. And so if you guys have any last thoughts you want to share, I'll go around the room again like we did before, and I'll start with Tyler. Tyler, did you get across what you think you wanted to get across today?
Yeah. I think this is a great opportunity. I just want to say, you were talking about your children, kind of reflecting back on you as a parent. I saw a thing the other day that was sort of a, hit home. It was just one of these, Instagram fucking pictures or whatever, but it said, to my child, I'm sorry that my traumas affected your childhood. And It's like, fuck. That's accurate. For every parent can probably look in the mirror and say, like, my traumas affected my kid, and that sucks. But beyond that, yeah, I think this was kudos to you for putting together this round table. And
this is Bryan's idea.
Ready. Bryan, hey, well, kudos to Bryan. But yeah, willing to come on here and open up. Most of us have probably 20 plus years in some sort of capacity of trauma and emergency services. And to get on here and open up, it's not going to come as a big surprise to people that have been in it for a long time, because they probably are thinking to themselves, whether they want to admit it or not, that, yeah, that's me on there talking. It's just coming through somebody else's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And to the new people getting into this business, they're seeing the veterans. It's weird to say that, but see the veterans opening up and saying, "This is the new normal. Let's embrace this and do this." And that's what I really want to see for the future of the fire service when it comes time for me to retire. That it's normal to have an in-house, counseling program or peer support. Let's make that as normal as daily training, where we're emptying out that closet and we're going home as we, came into this business as. So yeah, again, thank you for having me on and, introducing me to the podcast and the rest of the people that have listened and participated.
Yeah, man, of course. Ian, what about you? Last words?
Yeah, I mean, jumping off of what he said is just, I hope this helps somebody out there. And I know my time at the Center of Excellence, sitting around the table or around a fire pit, there was an asshole or, a real hard-headed guy that was there that was opening up finally. And I could match each individual around that fire pit with somebody in my department,
Amen, brother.
Yeah, like this guy reminds me of this dude. Like, oh, that's when he's an asshole, because we may be going through the same shit, and we're all cut from the same cookie cutter. We're all here because we want to help people at the end of the day. And moving forward, I mean, like, I don't see this as a negative at all, and I want it to where, like what Dan Morrow with Fuck the Stigma, we got to get out of this mindset of thinking that this is a bad thing. No, this is just another training tool. This is another.
It doesn't like my, there we go.
A family outing, the fire department is a family. Maybe a baseball game with you. It may be, and we got to bring the family back into the fire department.
Yeah.
I know COVID kind of restricted a lot of that, but it pays huge to have that investment where you're looking out for the one next to you, and I think that really benefits all.
My Wi-Fi shit in the bed lately. I'm still here, guys. I'm not sure everything froze for me. Gonna take some editing now. Yeah. Well, we might not get last words except for yours. So let me hear what you have to say, Bryan.
Yeah, this is what I get for answering a question that you put out there. What would you like to see in future episodes?
Right.
But the couple of roundtables that you did, like the one you did with Mike Nasty and
TJ and Steph.
TJ and Steph, yeah. I thought those were awesome. And with listening to those, I thought, wow, if he brought some people back that he had in previous shows, I think that could really be beneficial. They could share where they are now, what they learned, and things like that, just like what we've talked about. And he made it happen. Of course, you put it out there. Well, I guess I'm going to see you there, huh?
Yeah.
So definitely, and I'm glad to be here. One of the biggest things, I think, following up with somebody, if you've got somebody that you've talked to, and I know that peer support has been mentioned and things like that. I was part of a peer support group.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that peer support lacks, or that we lack as individuals, is following up with somebody that comes to us.
Yeah.
And making sure they're okay.
Right.
And it didn't dawn on me. I was listening to another podcast. It was a little over a year ago.
I got an Indian dark horse.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
There they are.
Came back. Brian was just finishing.
Really?
I had Brian finish what he was saying before we came back on, so I apologize. He was saying that he's had people on peer support that didn't reach out to people they checked in with.
Yeah, I was going to go with I was part of a peer support group. I did more of the organization and helping to run the peer support group at the time, and then I all of a sudden quit. I knew, because what I was going through, I couldn't do peer support anymore. And I actually was sitting there thinking, man, this is bullshit that you're part of peer support and you can't even help yourself.
Right.
But I knew if I couldn't help myself, I couldn't help anybody else.
Right.
So I quit peer support. And then I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about peer support and follow up and things like that. And it dawned on me, you know what? I abruptly just went and quit a peer support group. There are people in that group that knew I was going through something, and I never once heard anything from them. Never. Not even like getting reintegrated with the department. I, said it was a hard time getting reintegrated back out in the field and stuff like that, was having difficulty. And there was never any follow-up. So my advice, follow up. If you're a company officer, if you're part of peer support, if you're just a friend, and somebody's got something going on and you're going through it with them or helping them, follow up with them. Don't let them feel like they're in it all by themselves, because after a little while, you feel like you're all by yourself. You're alone, that no one cares. And that follow up, hey, how are things going? That means a lot. And it goes a long way.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
They're going to remember that for that time when they end up helping somebody else later down the road.
What you got for me, Mike? Oh, who'd I just cut off? Did I cut you off again?
Oh, I was just saying, that's, we'll sign up for a truck class and we want to go get trained by, that truck guru. It's the same thing for us. Because we're open about this and we're talking to help other people go through. I have dabbled in the idea of going to peer support, because we won't talk to somebody unless you know what the hell we're going through. And we are the best advocates on the other end of this that have gone through it and are willing to admit it. But that sucks, the fact that nobody called to follow back up with you. We don't do that to each other. We shouldn't do that to each other, and I don't know if you guys have guys that get detailed out.
Oh yeah.
To go work at other stations on your shift. But dude, take the 2 morning, call that firehouse and ask for that firefighter. Hey bro, how you doing today? Are they taking care of you? And it's just, those little small tidbits that can just let somebody know you freaking care.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right, Mike, what do you have?
It's definitely, I found myself on that island many times, and again, so I try to make sure that, I've got one firefighter that I know went to the center after me, that I meet for coffee every now and then. And that was one of the first things that I told that individual when they came back. I was like, you're going to be on that. At some point, you're going to be sitting there. You'll be like, holy shit, I'm back on this island again. I was like, and you better reach out, because I'm going to reach out to you, type deal. As far as as far as, getting them, did I get everything out on this episode? We could probably sit and talk about this all day long.
Oh, yeah.
And just keep, adding to the story. My big thing, just like the rest of these guys, is I want to be that advocate for our mental health, the advocate for the substance abuse shit that we all deal with. So again, just me coming on here, sharing my stuff, talking with you all, again, if that young person, if they hear it and they're like, maybe I should, we've done our job.
Perfect. I like it. Listen, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for coming back on. Thanks for coming on initially. Thanks for coming back on today. And this exceeded any expectation, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you,
Yep,
Scott.
thank you.
So if you guys hold on, I know it's going to take a second to upload the recording, especially since mine's been piss poor lately. So just hold on 1 second, and I'll close it out and let it load up, and then we'll be done. All right. We are out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.